The email came at 7:13 p.m. on a Monday. Your authority over licenses including HARD DT 83544, HARD EP 221098, and NRC 508102 has been formally relinquished. Entities dependent on these licenses will be marked non-compliant in 24 hours unless reauthorized by a certified replacement. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and smiled, because 200 miles away, Ashley Reynolds was about to find out what happens when you fire the only man holding 37 federal certifications your company needs to exist. But let me back up 6 weeks. My name is Russell Pemberton. I'm 52 years old, and I was halfway through updating a DOT compliance spreadsheet when the video feed crackled to life on a Tuesday morning. There she was, Ashley Reynolds, maybe 28 if we're being generous. Designer athleisure wear, AirPods that never left her ears, blonde highlights that probably cost more than my truck payment. The CFO introduced her. Charles Reynolds, her father. She was our new digital transformation officer. Corporate speak for my daughter needs a job and I'm letting her play executive. Hi team, she said with that smile people have when they've never been told no. I'm here to streamline operations and eliminate process redundancies. Her eyes landed on me through the screen, like looking at an old filing cabinet you're about to throw out. I didn't react, just clicked save on the folder I'd been building. Every DOT certification, every EPA renewal, every OSHA timestamp tied to my name. Labeled it Tacklebox GPS coordinates, and backed it up to a private drive. Russell Pemberton wasn't going out like a rookie. By lunch, I heard her in the break room, laughing with 2 junior analysts about phasing out legacy infrastructure. I'm 52, not ancient. But in Ashley's world, if you didn't learn your job from a YouTube tutorial, you were obsolete. The following Tuesday came the all-hands meeting. Everyone crammed into the open floor plan like we were about to witness something historic. Ashley pulled up a slide deck. AI-powered compliance ecosystem, blockchain integrated accountability hubs, the kind of phrases that sound impressive until you realize they mean absolutely nothing. 3 interns nodded like she'd just solved world hunger. Some team members, she said, eyes drifting to me, especially those with legacy responsibilities, will be reassessed to ensure alignment with our agile strategy. Then, staring directly at me, we appreciate your historical contributions, Russell. Historical. Like I was a display at the Smithsonian. I smiled. The kind of smile you have when you know something they don't. That night I stayed late, not because I had to. I wanted to watch the system one last time. I pulled up my credentials across 4 federal databases: DOT Master Certificate, EPA Hazmat Authority, OSHA Inspection Clearance, Nuclear Regulatory Commission Transport License, all active, all tied to my name. I'd built this compliance framework from the ground up when I left the Army in 2010. Spent 15 years as a logistics sergeant managing transport for everything from medical supplies to munitions. When I transitioned to civilian work, I learned fast that nobody cares about your expertise until it's gone. I double-checked the timestamps, made sure everything matched, then I printed my contract, the part nobody ever reads. Section 7C. In the event of involuntary termination, all company-funded licensing responsibilities and regulatory certifications shall be considered void. All credentials will be formally rescinded within 48 hours of contract nullification. Nobody noticed when I left the building that night, but I noticed Ashley watching me that morning, looking at me the way a kid looks at an old computer before throwing it out. You ever watch someone mistake a fuse for a shoelace? By the next Tuesday, Ashley had posted a sign above the copy machine. Compliance Complacency. The font was Comic Sans. Then came the real show. Everyone had to re-interview for their evolved roles. They called it a growth opportunity. I called it exactly what it was. One by one, people shuffled into conference rooms. The younger folks came out smiling. Ashley really gets it. She's bringing fresh energy. I wanted to tell them that kind of energy comes from a busted gas line. When my turn came, I didn't bring a resume. Ashley barely looked up from her laptop. Russell, you've been here a while. 15 years. Right. Institutional knowledge. We value that. Her fingers tapped the keys. Probably typing fire the old guy into Slack. She pulled up an org chart and pointed at a box labeled Regulatory Stewardship. My name was crossed out. Next to it, open for reassignment. Then she clicked a tab. Q3 license transition plan. In the notes. Can these be transferred downstream? Downstream meant dumped on some 23-year-old who thought OSHA was a yoga studio. I smiled. Inside, a clock started ticking. Back at my desk, I opened the database I'd built in 2010. Every certification tracked. Expiration dates, governing bodies, signature authority. 37 items total. 37 certifications. 37 pieces of red tape woven into one tight noose. All of them tied to me. I exported a fresh copy, encrypted it, renamed it Fantasy Football Stats 2019, and emailed it to myself. Then I cleared the sent items. Call me paranoid, but I've seen what happens when kids play with matches and call it innovation. That afternoon, Ashley reassigned my DOT inspection prep to Trevor Walsh, a marketing intern who thought hazmat meant hazmath. He actually asked if it was related to our accounting software. Meanwhile, she tasked me with reorganizing the supply closet, said it would keep me engaged at a foundational level. Foundational like mold. I asked politely if I still had admin access to the licensing dashboard. Ashley blinked. Oh, I think we routed that to Amanda last week. You don't really need it anymore, right? Amanda Sullivan had been here 6 months. Still couldn't export a PDF, I nodded. Then I logged into a terminal down the hall and revoked her access from the shadow admin panel I'd never told anyone about. If I was getting kicked off the ship, I wasn't leaving the map behind. Later that day, I walked past Ashley's glass-walled office. She was laughing on a call. Something about scrubbing out the old wood. She didn't notice me watching. The first time I heard them laughing at me, I let it slide. 3 junior analysts, Trevor Walsh, Brandon Hughes, and Rachel Winters, hovering over a printout of my old compliance flowchart like it was a cave painting. This thing uses color codes like a kindergarten project, Trevor snorted. Brandon added, he timestamps everything manually. Does he know automation exists? They were clustered near the break room, sipping cold brew and dropping buzzwords like machine learning integration, as if those phrases had ever stopped a federal inspection. I walked past, head high. By Wednesday of the second week, I'd been locked out of 3 internal dashboards, 2 of which I designed, no warning, just a red 403 error and a pop-up. Contact your system administrator. I was the system administrator. I emailed IT, no reply, called HR, got voicemail colder than a Michigan winter, finally reached a real person after 4 attempts. Sorry, Russell. All requests now go through your departmental manager. That's Ashley Reynolds. They said her name like announcing the second coming. I hung up and stared at my screen. Empty but glowing. Cut off from every system I'd built in less than a week. No explanation, just streamlining. Ashley was smart in that MBA way. Never smart enough to build something, but just smart enough to know how to dismantle it under the cover of policy updates. She'd started slipping grenades into her weekly reports to leadership. Legacy processes under review. Potential staffing overlaps identified, redundant certification management flagged. That last one was cute, like you could overlap a federally mandated signature tied to my biometric profile. I'd become a walking contradiction, officially employed but strategically erased. So I scheduled a visit to a notary office. Quiet place above a hardware store on Jefferson Avenue. No drama, just me, a stiff chair, and a form titled Voluntary Relinquishment of Licensing Authority. I didn't sign it. Just notarized the option. A safety pin in my pocket in case things went sideways. Afterward, I walked back with a black coffee. Ashley passed me in the hallway. Hope you're feeling more aligned this week, Russell. Just tying up loose ends. She smiled. That corporate consultant smile you find in airport bookstores next to Disrupt Yourself and a $40 notebook. What she didn't know was that every loose end I tied had a timer attached. And Monday was coming. It happened on a Monday. The kind of Monday where the air in the office feels like microwaved plastic and everyone pretends they like their jobs just enough to survive another week. We were gathered for Ashley's weekly momentum sync, basically a TED Talk for sociopaths. She stood at the front of the bullpen in a tailored blazer doing that palms out gesture like she was calming sheep. Let's start with some candor, she said. That's how you know someone's about to gut you in public, when they lead with candor. We've been doing reflection over the last few weeks. She paced like she was selling timeshares. While tradition has value, stagnation is a threat. She stopped right behind my chair. I didn't turn around. Unfortunately, she said loud and clear, certain legacy roles are no longer aligned with our forward momentum. People shifted in their seats. Some looked at the floor. A couple glanced at me. One kid tried to smile like this was normal. Then came the hammer. Effective immediately, Russell Pemberton's position has been phased out. No warning, no meeting, no one-on-one, just a sentence hanging in the air. I stood up. Not because I was shaken. My legs just knew it was time to move. HR showed up. Two of them, Jennifer Palmer and Brian Foster. Both young, both avoiding eye contact, holding a glossy folder like they were delivering communion. I took it, opened it, flipped to the termination page. No severance, just legal jargon and a signature line. I pulled a pen from my bag, signed in one stroke. I'll need a printed copy. Ashley blinked. It's all digital, printed. HR hesitated. I stared. 4 minutes later, I walked out with a paper copy, a stapled receipt, and the calm of a man who knew exactly what he'd just done. You see, when I signed that form, Section 7C activated across 4 federal databases. An invisible tripwire. Every certification paid for by the company, my certifications, immediately queued for auto-revocation. Not expired, not suspended, nullified. I never had to use that notary form I'd prepared. Section 7C did the work for me. At 7:13 p.m. that night, my phone pinged. I read the email, poured bourbon, watched the Tigers game, didn't check my phone again. Tuesday night, 7:13 p.m., marked the 24-hour deadline. Every license officially invalid. Wednesday morning started quiet. I was at home in jeans and a Tigers t-shirt, eating cold pizza, ESPN on mute in the background. My phone buzzed at 9:04 a.m. Walt Briggs, my old platoon sergeant from the Army. We'd kept in touch over the years. He worked in freight logistics, heard things through the grapevine. Russ, you crazy son of a bitch. You really did it. I took a sip of coffee. Learn from the best, Sarge. Never leave gear behind for the enemy. He laughed. Hoo-ah. They're losing their minds over there. My niece Nicole works in your old building. Says procurement's been on the phone all morning trying to explain why shipments are getting rejected. That right? DOT's flagging everything. EPA's kicking back manifests. It's a shit show. I smiled. Appreciate the intel, Walt. Anytime, brother. Enjoy the show. I hung up and poured another coffee. At that exact moment, 9:04 a.m., procurement at Pemberton Logistics Group tried to confirm shipment of hazmat filtration components for Midwest Manufacturing, one of our biggest clients. The kind of stuff you don't transport without 3 signatures and a DOT stamp. The vendor's reply: cannot fulfill. Receiving entity listed as inactive. License DT 883544 expired. Contact certifying officer. That was me. 10 minutes later, the system started choking. Logins failed. API calls crashed. A scheduled data sync to the EPA audit portal returned. Invalid license holder. That same hour, the compliance dashboard, once clean and green, started lighting up red. Inactive flags. Credentials marked orphaned. Ashley strolled into the operations wing with her to-go latte. We'll just update the contact info. Amanda Sullivan tried to explain. Ma'am, contact updates require certification, reauthorization. Russell was the certifying officer. Legally. Ashley blinked. So do it anyway. He was the only credentialed officer with reauthorization authority across all active verticals. No one else is registered with the Federal Compliance Board. Amanda paused. And re-registration takes weeks. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The fatal kind. Like watching someone realize the iceberg isn't going to move. Ashley rubbed her temples. Why didn't anyone tell me this earlier? Amanda, barely old enough to rent a car, replied quietly. Russell was the one who told people that. By noon, the executive floor was getting panicked messages. Can we get Russell back? Does his NDA prevent contact? Who signed off on this? Nobody answered. I got a text from Nicole Torres, Walt's niece, worked as a junior analyst. Good kid. Always left post-it notes on my desk with bad jokes during audit season. Mr. Pemberton, this is chaos. Ashley's freaking out. Are you okay? I texted back. I'm fine, Nicole. Just watching things play out. She replied, everyone's asking what happened. The system's completely locked. Sometimes the old systems know things the new ones don't. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store where the notary office was. Bought a new drill bit set I didn't need. Took my time walking back to the truck. No rush. Thursday came and went. More emails bouncing, more vendors backing out, more clients asking questions. I didn't answer my phone when unknown numbers called. Friday morning arrived with the kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. For them anyway. For me, it was just another day. I was getting an oil change on my truck when the real fireworks started. Because Friday morning at 10 o'clock a.m., 3 DOT federal auditors walked into Pemberton Logistics Group. No relation to me, just an unfortunate coincidence that made the irony sweeter, with clipboards and the authority of IRS agents in body armor. Randomized site inspection. It was legit. Random, yes, but randomized within a window I'd always planned for. Quietly. Annually. Color-coded spreadsheets cross-referenced against vendor contracts and renewal cycles. By 9:22 a.m., the front desk called compliance. 3 inspectors here, they're asking for the license holder. Long silence, because there wasn't one. Ashley, now visibly sweating, sprinted to the legal wing. Can we get Russell's credentials reinstated? A junior associate Googled license reinstatement process like it was a recipe for banana bread. Ashley tried logging into the DOT credentialing portal using my old login. Access denied. She requested a password reset. User not found. She called the regulatory board's help desk. They transferred her 3 times, then calmly told her, Russell Pemberton voluntarily relinquished his license authority. His ID has been removed from the registry. Reinstatement requires full recertification. Average timeline, 4 to 6 weeks. Ashley stared at the speakerphone. She turned to HR. What clause did he use? They flipped through my termination file. We just processed standard exit paperwork. We don't know anything about credentials. Someone from audit spoke up. Didn't he have a clause in his employment contract? That's when the room remembered. Russell Pemberton wasn't some dusty old compliance guy. He was the linchpin, and they'd yanked him out. The auditors sat in the lobby. The company legally couldn't let them into secured areas without a licensed compliance officer present, which meant the audit couldn't proceed, which meant every vendor and client relying on certified compliance would be in breach of contract in approximately 4 hours. I was in the garage working on my '67 Corvette when Nicole texted me again. They can't let the inspectors in. Everyone's panicking. This is insane. I wiped oil off my hands and typed back. Sometimes you don't know what holds a building up until you remove it. She replied with 3 exclamation points. I went back to replacing the carburetor. By Friday afternoon, the situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. The DOT auditors left without conducting the inspection. Filed a formal notice of non-compliance. 2 major clients, Midwest Manufacturing and Apex Industrial Group, sent emails asking for status updates on their compliance certifications. Nobody at Pemberton Logistics could give them answers. Because the only person who knew the answers was torquing bolts on a vintage engine and listening to classic rock. The weekend passed. I went fishing Saturday, caught nothing but didn't care. Sunday, I watched football and ignored 7 calls from unknown numbers. Monday morning, 8:37 a.m. The building smelled like stale coffee and quiet panic. That's when Bennett Crawford walked in, CEO of Pemberton Logistics Group, 58 years old. Fresh from back-to-back industry conferences and a week in Aspen, silk shirt still creased, looking like he'd just discovered his house was on fire. He strolled through the atrium waving at people, throwing finger guns at VPs. Morning, folks. Hope you didn't burn the place down. Nobody laughed. By the time he hit the executive floor, he had 5 unread emails flagged urgent and a voicemail from legal that ended with compliance disaster. At 9:02 a.m., he burst into operations expecting minor turbulence. Instead, he walked into a plane crash. Operations frozen, vendor shipments halted, inspections failed, certifications invalid, clients furious, revenue dashboard flatlining. He turned to the room of red-eyed managers. Who's handling this? Every head turned toward Ashley. She looked less like a visionary and more like a kid who'd just flooded the gym with glitter glue. Bennett pulled up my termination paperwork on the wall monitor, read it in silence. Scrolled more. Finally, he said it, quiet at first. You fired the license holder. Ashley opened her mouth, closed it. Bennett's voice dropped. You fired the person with sole federal licensing authority across all departments. Her responsibilities were deemed redundant. Ashley stammered. Bennett laughed. Not a funny laugh. My kid just sold our house for crypto laugh. He pointed at the screen. His name is on every regulatory document, every active license, every renewal path, every compliance chain this company depends on to exist. He tossed a file onto the table like a blackjack dealer. Here's our top 5 suspended vendors, all frozen due to expired certifications. He paused. Russell Pemberton listed on every single one. Bennett spun back to the room. And you let someone who writes in buzzwords fire him. Ashley tried one last shot. I thought we could reassign it. Update contact info. It's a federal license, not an email alias. Silence. Bennett grabbed his phone, looked up my contact. Nothing in the system. We tried reaching him, HR said. He's unresponsive. Bennett sighed, sat down, rubbed his temples like the aspen sunburn had crawled behind his eyes. Then get him back. Pay whatever it takes. We'll name a wing after him if we have to. But even he knew. The man they'd tossed like old furniture now held the keys to their kingdom. And I wasn't standing at the gate anymore. That afternoon, Bennett's assistant, Perry Nelson, sent me 6 emails. Subject lines escalating from follow-up discussion to urgent. Return requested by CEO directive. I didn't open any of them. I was at the hardware store buying wood stain for a bookshelf project. The final email came at 4:47 p.m. from Bennett Crawford himself. Russell, we recognize the critical nature of your previous contributions. Please consider this opportunity to help us restore operational integrity. We are prepared to be flexible. Let's rebuild together. Bennett. No mention of an apology, no ownership of what happened, just veiled desperation dressed in HR language. I sat at my kitchen table, poured bourbon, composed a reply. Bennett, I appreciate the offer, truly. Unfortunately, I don't return to burning buildings, especially ones where I was thrown into the fire for streamlining. As requested, please find attached, highlighted copy of my signed termination clause, Section 7C, formal confirmation of license revocation from the National Registry Board, screenshot of your company's certification dashboard taken 72 hours post-termination. You'll notice my name still listed, grayed out, irreplaceable. Wishing you compliance and clarity. Russell Pemberton. No flair, no threats, no negotiations, just receipts. I clicked send and exhaled. Not like a man mourning a lost job, like someone closing a door they built, installed, and locked from the outside. Bennett read the email in silence, didn't forward it, didn't reply. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on that grayed-out dashboard screenshot. For the first time since stepping off his private plane, he understood. They hadn't just fired an employee, they'd excommunicated the one person who understood the religion. The following Tuesday, I got a call from Marcus Webb, forklift operator at Pemberton Logistics. Been there 20 years, good guy, worked third shift, always showed up early. Mr. Pemberton, his voice was rough. This is bullshit what they're doing. Appreciate that, Marcus. You built this place, don't let them forget it. I smiled. I won't. We talked for a few minutes. He told me half the warehouse crew was looking for new jobs, said morale was in the toilet. I thanked him for the call, hung up and looked out the window. The sun was setting over the freight yard I used to manage, containers stacked like Lego blocks, trucks idling at the gates, all of it running on certifications that no longer existed. 3 weeks later, LinkedIn damn near exploded. There I was, Russell Pemberton, new position, Director of Compliance Strategy, Interstate Freight Solutions. The post was short, no hashtags. Grateful to join a team where expertise isn't an afterthought. Below it, 2 lines. IFS secures Midwest Manufacturing and Apex Industrial Group contracts, citing continuous compliance confidence as deciding factor. Those were the crown jewels. The 2 biggest clients Pemberton Logistics bragged about in every earnings call. Gone. Back at Pemberton Logistics Group, the company that shared my last name through pure coincidence, which made the whole thing even more ironic, things went from bad to worse. The dashboard never turned green. License appeals choked in bureaucracy. The Federal Compliance Board doesn't rush for anyone, especially not for companies that can't explain why their sole certifying officer suddenly disappeared from their registry. Legal fines rolled in daily. Some automated, some hand-delivered like hate mail from the gods. DOT penalties for missed inspections. EPA citations for improper hazmat documentation. OSHA violations for operating without proper clearance. Each one stamped with a reference number that traced back to certifications that used to have my name on them. Vendors dropped out one by one. First the small ones, the regional carriers who couldn't afford the liability of working with a non-compliant entity. Then the mid-sized logistics partners who had shareholders to answer to. Finally, the big players, the ones with legal teams who could smell blood in the water from 3 states away. Clients started asking questions, then demanding answers, then sending termination notices. The holiday party got canceled due to budgetary adjustments. Someone leaked that executive bonuses were being deferred indefinitely. Ashley Reynolds didn't get a goodbye cake, didn't get a Zoom call with the team. One day she was there, the next day her office was empty, her nameplate gone, her AirPods no longer bouncing around the hallways. I heard through Walt's network that she'd moved to her father's vacation property in Scottsdale. Posted on Instagram about taking time to realign with my authentic self. Her father, Charles Reynolds, the CFO who'd enabled the whole thing, lasted another month before pursuing other opportunities. Bennett Crawford brought in a crisis management firm from Chicago. They recommended immediate restructuring, emergency recertification efforts, and a complete audit of all compliance procedures. The kind of audit I used to conduct in my sleep. The firm's lead consultant, some guy in his 40s with an expensive suit and a condescending presentation style, apparently asked during his first week, "Who built your original compliance framework?" When they told him it was Russell Pemberton, he pulled up my LinkedIn profile and went quiet. Then he asked, "And you fired him?" Nobody had a good answer for that. The recertification process they'd been told would take 4 to 6 weeks turned into 12 weeks. Because you can't just replace 15 years of institutional knowledge with a Google search and a prayer. Every certification had dependencies, cross-references to other licenses, renewal cycles that interlocked like gears in a watch. I'd built it that way on purpose, not as a trap, as a system. The kind of system that works perfectly when maintained by someone who understands it, and falls apart when you remove that person and replace them with someone who thinks compliance is just filling out forms. By week 8, 2 more Fortune 500 clients had jumped ship, not to competitors, to Interstate Freight Solutions. To me. I didn't have to pitch them, didn't have to explain what happened. They'd heard the stories, seen the warning signs, done the math. When a company loses its compliance infrastructure, you don't wait around to see if they can rebuild it. You go where the infrastructure already exists, where someone who knows what they're doing is holding the reins. My new office at IFS had windows overlooking the freight yard, real windows, not the fake natural light LED panels they'd installed at Pemberton to boost morale. I could watch the containers getting loaded, see the trucks rolling in and out, know that every single shipment had the proper documentation, the correct certifications, the right signatures, because I'd set it up that way. My desk had a framed DOT master certificate on the wall, newly issued, still warm from the printer. Next to it, a photo from my first week, me shaking hands with Richard Torres, IFS's CFO. He was 62, former Army logistics colonel. We'd compared service records over coffee and talked about the right way to build systems that last. Mutual respect, the kind you earn, not the kind you demand. In my reserved parking spot downstairs sat my '67 Corvette, finally finished the restoration, cherry red paint, chrome that could blind you, engine that purred like a dream. Every morning I'd arrive early, park it in that spot marked R. Pemberton, Director of Compliance Strategy, and walk into a building where people actually valued what I knew. 3 months after I joined IFS, I got an email from Charles Reynolds, Ashley's father, the CFO who'd backed every decision she made. Subject: professional courtesy. Russell, I should have listened. I let my judgment get clouded. What happened to you was wrong, and I take responsibility for my part in it. I hope you're doing well in your new role. Charles. I read it twice. Then I closed the email without replying. Some lessons you don't get to skip by sending an apology after the fact. Some bridges you don't get to rebuild just because you finally realized you burned them. I went back to reviewing a shipment manifest for a pharmaceutical client, making sure every T was crossed, every I was dotted. The kind of work that looks boring from the outside but keeps entire supply chains running. The kind of work Ashley Reynolds thought could be automated or streamlined or handed off to an intern. That afternoon, I got a message on LinkedIn from Amanda Sullivan, the junior analyst who'd tried to explain to Ashley why you can't just update contact info on a federal license. Mr. Pemberton, I wanted to reach out and say thank you. What happened to you opened my eyes to how things really work. I'm studying for my DOT certification now, taking it seriously. Hope you're doing well. Amanda. I wrote back, good for you, Amanda. Take your time. Learn it right. The shortcuts always cost more in the end. She replied with a simple, yes, sir. I smiled. Maybe some people do learn. That evening I stayed late at the office. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Wanted to watch the sun set over the freight yard, see the last trucks roll out for their night routes, know that everything was running the way it should. On my monitor, a yellow post-it note stuck to the frame. No signature, no emoji, just 5 words in block letters. In case they forget who built this. I'd written it my first week at IFS. A reminder. Not for them, for me. That the work matters. That expertise isn't legacy overhead. That experience isn't something you phase out because it doesn't fit on a slide deck. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, locked the office door, walked down to the parking lot where my Corvette sat waiting. The engine turned over on the first try. Always did when you maintained things properly. I drove home through the city, windows down, radio playing, something older than Ashley Reynolds. Pulled into my driveway, sat there for a minute in the quiet. My phone buzzed. Walt Briggs. Heard Pemberton Logistics is laying off 30% of their workforce. Guess they couldn't afford to keep the lights on. I typed back, shame. He sent, you feel bad? I looked at my house, my Corvette, my phone with emails from clients who trusted me, my career that I'd rebuilt on my own terms. No, I typed, I feel fine. Because here's what I learned after 52 years on this planet and 15 years in compliance. You don't need revenge when you have receipts. You don't need to gloat when the math speaks for itself. You don't need to burn bridges when people are perfectly capable of burning them themselves. Sometimes the old dog knows exactly where the bones are buried, and sometimes he's the only one with the shovel. I walked inside, poured bourbon, sat down in my chair, the one that didn't squeak, in the house I owned, in the life I'd built, and I slept like a baby. Because power doesn't need to raise its voice, it just walks away.